Hello, hello, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. Check out the setup. We are hanging out in the guest room of my dad's house right now. I got my new microphone ready to go. I feel good. I feel cute. I feel like we're going to have some fun here today. I just want this to be a cozy place where we can hang out and become the leaders that God has asked us to be. And that's really what this video is going to be about today. It's about what it means to be set apart. And before I go into that, I want to just preface this by saying I feel like this message is for someone so specific. Like this whole time, just feel like I'm talking to one person because it's like God told me that there's somebody who needs to know that they have been set apart or they're being set apart. They need to be validated in that. Because it can feel like a really isolating and uncomfortable journey, as we're going to get into. Like, God uses that word set apart so intentionally in his word. And when it came to me, I didn't know what it was going to become. I just heard it as set apart. You need to create something called set apart. And as time went on, God always gives me business ideas. He's the one forming my offers. And he showed me that this is going to be the name of my one-on-one space. And so it was like very intentional. There was one specific person or maybe two specific people that he's like calling into this space, created this space for. And the name was so intentional too. And so I launched the offer, the one-on-one space set apart. We're currently enrolling. And as I went through the process of starting to promote it, God was like, I need you to look into this deeper. Like, I need you to go into my word and find out what it means to be set apart, because that's the message that I want to communicate through you as you call this woman into the one-on-one space. Like, she needs to be seen. She needs to be validated in this experience. And so I went into the word and I found some really beautiful things and took some time to sit with it, especially because I know I'm talking to an entrepreneur and I love the Bible. I think it has so many incredible lessons, so much wisdom, and I love being able to distill that through my own personal experience as an entrepreneur, building a personal brand in 2025, and to make it relevant, to make it grounded, to make it approachable for anyone so that anyone can take the wisdom here and start to apply it in their own life. And just a little backstory about me. The backbone of my entire life and my entire work is that I felt like I came to Earth for a mission. Like, ever since I was a little girl, I just knew that I was not here by accident. And that's something that even as early as 3 years old, like my mom asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up, Sophia? And I told her I was going to be a teacher. She said, what are you going to teach people about? And I said, I'm going to teach people about God. And it was like, there was this seed that was planted from literally like as early as I can remember that I was just here for something big. And I know I'm not alone in this. I used to think I was alone. Like growing up, I felt so isolated because of that. I was like, nobody gets it. Like, I'm not here by accident. I'm not here to just play around. Like, there is a literal assignment that I have been sent on. Okay. And yeah, I felt like nobody understood that for a long time. And then as I started to get older, and just started to have more conversations with leaders and people who are like-minded, I started to realize that I was not alone in this. Like, there is a whole population of us who just know. We just know. We don't know how we know, and we don't even sometimes know what it is that we're exactly meant to do. There's just glimpses of it, but there is a knowing, a deep knowing in our heart that we are here for a mission. There is a reason. There is an assignment. It's like a duty almost, a responsibility that you are here to fulfill. And so I'm talking specifically to those people right now. And it's so, it's so interesting that that's something I've just like known my whole life. And then as I was reading about being set apart and what that means, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I felt my entire life. Like, it's right here in God's word. It's been here all along, just waiting for me to discover it here. So, that's just another beautiful part. So as I was kind of going into this, there were three things that I felt God was really revealing to me as it relates to being an entrepreneur and being a leader. And it's that being set apart means to be chosen. We're going to talk about what it means to be chosen. Being set apart means to be made different or distinct. I don't know why that little bubble's going off. Made different or distinct or separated in some way. And then the third element of being set apart is that you're appointed. Means you're given a responsibility or an assignment from God. And so those are the three kind of things that I want to dive into: being chosen, being made different, distinct, or separate, and then being appointed with a responsibility. So let's get into it. So I was looking, obviously the first thing I started, I was like, okay, what's the Hebrew definition of being set apart? Because set apart is used so much in God's word. And I was like, why would he make my one-on-one mentorship space be called set apart? And so in the Bible, set apart is a word called kadosh. That's the original Hebrew. And it means holy. So lacking nothing, holy. It means sacred or consecrated. And I had to go and look up what consecrated meant because I was like, what is that word? Consecrated means to be dedicated or separated for a divine purpose. So when something or someone is consecrated, it is distinct from the ordinary. Distinct from the ordinary. And it is devoted to God for a divine mission. That's what to be consecrated means. And what's really interesting that I found as I was going through different verses where this word set apart is used, and then going to the original meaning, which is kadosh, which could be used to say holy, sacred, consecrated, because you find those words so much. God actually uses this word, kadosh, to describe himself. One of my favorite verses that he uses this in, the one that first really jumped out at me as I was looking into this, was Leviticus 20:26, and he says, you are to be holy, okay, or kadosh, or set apart, consecrated. You are to be holy because I, the Lord, am holy, and I have set you apart from the nations to be my own. I love that. I've set you apart. Why is he setting you apart? To be his own. And then in 2 Corinthians 6:16, 17, it says, I will live with and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from them and be separate. I will be a father to you, and you will be my sons and daughters. Okay, we need to pause here because this is so interesting. And I feel like no matter what faith you come from, this is going to touch your heart. Because what it's saying is God wants to make us like himself. He's saying, I'm holy. I am separate. I am set apart. And I want you to be like me. Why? Because I want you to belong to me. Because I want to have a relationship with you that is as intimate as a parent and child relationship. And this is what's cool about the parent-child relationship. This is what's, Christianity is so beautiful because it's the only faith where God is Father, right? There's a similarity between a parent and a child. You can tell when two people are related to each other. And so God wants us to be related to him. He wants us to mirror his holiness, his perfection, his goodness, his love. He wants us to mirror that. He wants us to be reflections of that. He made us in his image and likeness to be like him. He wants us to be so similar to him that you would think it's like a parent to a child. And so when he's setting you apart, he is choosing you to become more like him. And he's saying, I want you to belong to me. I want you to be my own, right? Like the first thing he sets apart is Israel, the chosen people. And he does that for each and every one of us too. Like he's chosen you to be his child. He's chosen to make you more like him. And with that, this is what's really cool about being a child of God and being like God, is because there's an inheritance that comes with being a child of God, just like there's an inheritance. And you know what I love about inheritance is that it means you didn't have to earn it. It means you didn't have to work for it. Take that in for a sec. Like, who inherits a kingdom? The prince of that kingdom will then inherit it and become the king, not because he worked for it, not because he had to prove himself, not because he had to make himself valuable in some way, but because he was the child of the king. And I think one thing we're going to talk about being separate, being distinct. What are we being made distinct from? From the world. That's what we're being made distinct from. Because there is God's way and there is the world's way. And when God makes us distinct, he is showing us that we don't have to operate by the world's standards, and for the world's approval anymore. And there's so much peace in that, because guess what? The world is always going to tell you that you have to earn it. The world's going to tell you that you're worth nothing until you're worth something, or that your worth can be found in material possessions, in how much you've accomplished. I even think, I work with female entrepreneurs every single day who come to me questioning themselves, questioning whether they really are as talented, as gifted as they think they are, questioning whether they really have what it takes to create the dreams that they have in their heart, questioning whether anyone wants what they have to offer because they didn't see enough likes on their Instagram post. And the world has trained us, it's brought us up to believe that we have to produce something in order to be worth something. Like, even think about the school system and how that trains us. You have to pass the test in order to move on to the next level. You're always trying to be smarter, to prove, to earn the next level, the next grade, the reward in some way. But not with God. That's not how God works. God says, I want you to belong to me. I want you to be so similar to me that people think you're literally related to me. And when you are like that, when you become my child, there's an inheritance that comes with that. And he says, you will possess their land. I will give it to you as an inheritance, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God who has set you apart. Again, he uses that word. Set you apart from the nations. What is it saying? It's saying he's different. Yeah, girl, I know I'm sideways. It's meant to be that way. Get cozy with me. Turn your phone. But it's saying he's setting us apart from the nations. He's making you different. He's making you more like him. He's making you so similar to him that people relate you to. And when that happens, there's an inheritance that comes. And I love Galatians 4:7. I found this one. This one was a fire scripture. So you are no longer a slave, but God's child. And since you are his child, God has also made you an heir. And I want us to think of that when we consider the dreams and the vision that God has placed in our heart. Like, the things that God has made us to do. Each and every one of us has a unique dream. No one of us has the exact same dream. No one of us has the exact same vision. That's the inheritance. I want you to stop thinking of that dream as a goal, as something you might one day achieve, and I want you to start thinking of it as a promise from God, as an inheritance that you don't have to earn, you just have to step into. How? By becoming more like him. And it's seek first the kingdom, right? And everything will be added unto you. God even tells us, like, for my children, all you got to do is ask. I'm going to give it to you. That's the father-parent relationship that he wants us to have with him. And that's what it means when he sets us apart. He's literally saying, like, I've chosen you to become more like me. And in doing so, there are going to be gifts that are given to you. And the vision and dream you have, it's not just a goal. It's an inheritance that you get. Okay. Morgan asks, have you ever felt like the dream you had begins to change when you welcome God in? Absolutely, yeah. It's so funny, Morgan. Even since giving my life to Jesus, there are things that I was so sure that I wanted. Like, so sure. Like, I had actually wanted them for, like, years. And it just changed. Like, it honestly changed overnight. And I think the more surrendered you get to God, I think the more you start to look to God for, like, hey, change my heart. Like, make me only want the things that you want for me. Like that's true surrender, right? You're like really putting your will down and making his will above your own. The things you want will change. The vision might shift, the vision might change. But what I want to say, because I also think people have this idea that when you truly devote yourself to God, for some people, when you give your life to Jesus, that you're going to lose who you are. And that is not the case at all. The truth is that you become who you were always like meant to be. Like the things you really care about, the things you've always wanted, they just get louder. They don't get quieter. Like if you've always had a love for fashion, God's not going to take that away from you. He's actually just going to show you how to use it for his purpose. And he's going to refine it and make it better. Even with me, like, I don't know what's happening to me. But I mean, you could tell just by this setup. And I think the way that my voice sounds lately, the message is coming out so much stronger. Like there is an identity, there's a character, there's an authority that I'm speaking with that I didn't have before. Everything that I wanted in that sense, everything I always saw myself in, like since I was a child, everything that's core to who I am is just gotten stronger because it's like God has chipped away all the things that were actually hiding that and the things that were ankle weights to my destiny. Like you will get stripped of some desires and some things, but it's because it's not who you actually were. And we have to remember, oh my gosh, I'm so happy this is coming to me. Guys, you weren't made for yourself. You were made for God. You were an idea in God's mind before you were anything. And even something that I love, this is a scripture I had for later, but I'm going to just share it now. Jeremiah 1:5 says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet of nations. So you were set apart before you were even born, which tells me that there's a specific role you were actually designed for. And the closer you get to God, the closer you get to know that role. And then as an entrepreneur, it's funny because I've always said, you know, my whole branding process is built around this. It's the born for this branding process. I always say you were born for this because I literally always felt like I was born for something. And God's word just confirms that. Like, yeah, you actually were born for something. And the more you know yourself, the first step to becoming known, this is one of my like slogans in the branding program that I have, is the first step to becoming known is to deeply, truly know yourself. But how can you know yourself if you don't know the one who created you? Like, he formed me in the womb. He knows who I am because he made me, because I'm an idea of his. I don't belong to me. And I think there's a level of like humility that even comes with being able to say that, but there's also a level of freedom because instead of always trying to, and even in the world of business, like we're always asking ourselves, how do I become known? What do I want to become known for? That's a question that, man, I've sat for like weeks on end with my clients. What do I want to become known for? And it's so hard to answer for myself because then what I get into is this frame of mind where I'm like, okay, well, I see what she's known for and she's known for and she's known for and she's known for. So maybe I'll just make myself a blend of like all those other people. You start looking out for the answer. And even if you look in, it's like, how do you know when you've landed on the thing? And so what I started asking myself instead was, what does God want to make known through me? Because then I'm really aligning with my original purpose, which is not my purpose, it's God's purpose because I belong to him. And being set apart, the acknowledgement of that, it's the acknowledgement that we were chosen. That's the first and foremost thing. He chose us. He wants us to belong to him. He wants to make us like himself. He wants to reveal his original intention for your life to you. And I think this is a great time to start to segue into the next part of what it means to be set apart, which is to be made different, to be made distinct, to be different from the ordinary, to be made different, even is another way to say this, to be separated from, because there's no moment when God sets something apart that he doesn't expect it to become different than something else. And so let's dive in here. What do we have? Okay, this is going to be kind of a harsh one, but I think it's good to say, it's so funny. I read these, I always like how I'll read the Bible just so you guys can understand if, like, for example, it's a topic like this where it's set apart. That's what we're diving into, what it means to be set apart. I'll find the scriptures where he uses the word set apart, and then I will go and read backwards because you have to understand the context that he's saying this in. So it's so funny. Remember how we talked about Leviticus 20:24, where he says, I will give you an inheritance, a land flowing with milk and honey. So he's talking about how he sets apart this nation. He's setting you apart from the other nations. He's setting you apart from the other people. Think of God setting you apart from everyone else in your industry. Think of God setting you apart from everyone else in this online personal brand space. Okay. And he's saying, I'm going to give you an inheritance, right? That vision, that's a promise from me. A land flowing with milk and honey. But then, if you just go a couple lines before that, this is hilarious. He goes, keep all my decrees and laws and follow them, so that the land where I am bringing you to live may not vomit you out. So he's like, there's an inheritance that I want to give you because I chose you. But like, there's certain things I'm going to ask of you so that that land doesn't vomit you out. In other words, there's certain things I'm going to ask of you so that you can actually receive the inheritance that I have for you. There's certain things I'm going to ask of you so that you can actually step into the purpose that I created you for. And we know this, guys. Like, this isn't even like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. You don't even have to be like a crazy religious faith-based person to figure this out, to know that on the journey to creating, to building something, there's a refinement in your character that has to happen. Some of you are waiting for God to increase your paycheck before you ask him to shape your character. Some of you are waiting for God to increase the people that you're stewarding before you even ask him to increase the vision that you have. Like, your vision is just way too small. And I think there's certain things that God needs to do in us before the inheritance comes. And that's literally what it says. It's so that the land doesn't vomit you out, you know? So God requires us to be holy like himself. In other words, to be made distinct from the ordinary, so that we can belong to him and receive the inheritance he has for us. It's also what allows us to carry out the special purpose he created us for. This is another one. And like, guys, I never thought I would be this person who's just like quoting scripture, but when you read it, you're just like, there's actually no better way to say it than how we just said it. So that's why it's like, let's read it, let's dive into it, let's make it applicable to our lives. So it goes, in a large house, there are articles not only of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay. Some are for special purposes, some are for common use. Those who cleanse themselves from the latter will be instruments for special purposes, made holy, again that word, made holy, which means set apart, kadosh, the Hebrew original meaning of the word. Made holy, useful to the master, and prepared to do any good work. So that's 2 Timothy 2:20. And I love that because he's saying, listen, there's items of gold and silver, but there's also wood and clay, right? There's some things that are for special purposes, and there's some things that are for common use. Those who cleanse themselves from the latter, so those who make themselves different or separate from the latter, will be instruments for special purposes, made holy, so that the useful to the master and prepared to do any good work. So before you step into your mission, you have to allow God to refine your character and make you different from the world. Because there are ankle weights that are holding on to your destiny, keeping you ordinary. I love this. Like, what's keeping you ordinary right now? The more I walk on this journey of faith and like get to know God and be restored to my original design, the more I realize how crazy the world is and like how far we've come from God's original design, how corrupt we've gotten from God's original design for us. And you start to look at that, and instead of wanting to conform to it, which is what we're naturally taught to do, especially growing up in our society, it's like It's so interesting because it goes against our basic survival instinct, which is to fit in, to belong, right? Hold on, gotta take a sip of water. In order to survive in the tribe, the tribal mind, you need to fit in. You need to belong, or else you're going to get kicked out of the tribe, and getting kicked out of the tribe means death. And so we naturally have that impulse where we want to fit into the world that we exist in. And how that shows up in business is oftentimes we're looking around and we're comparing ourselves to the other people who are in the room. We're asking ourselves, how can I stand out? We're asking ourselves, we're looking at their results, wondering why we don't have those results. We are looking at them and subconsciously mimicking their strategies or their way of doing things, their words, even their voice. You ever start working with a mentor and all of a sudden you become her? And this feels like such a good time to kind of talk about my journey of being set apart, especially from the industry that I'm in, because it really does become like a vortex, especially online social media. Like, we're just in the world surrounded by this every single day, every moment of the day. Like, you have to be intentional about even taking a break from it. But my first year of business, I invested thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to work with all these different types of coaches. And what I found was every time I would invest with a coach, I would become more and more obsessed with the coach. There really was like this obsessive energy behind their presence. And I would start kind of being molded into like a mini version of them subconsciously, like without even realizing it. And then I'd catch it. Or I just start like glorifying them, making them an idol, asking myself, how can I become more like them? And this is something about humans we need to understand about ourselves. We are meant to worship. We are literally made for worship. And even like people that are running our society today, they know this, and that's why celebrity culture exists, because they need to give us something to worship. Because if we're not worshiping, if we're worshiping something else, we're not going to be worshiping God. It was so easy to distract, like when you really start to understand our nature. But we're made to worship. We're always going to find an idol. We're always going to find something to look up to and want to chase and want to follow and want to become more like, which is why God literally says, I'm choosing you to become my people and I will be your God, which is why God is a jealous God, it says in the Bible, which is why there's a commandment against false idols. Like, if we're not idolizing and worshiping and humbling ourselves before God, we are going to do it for something else. We are going to do it for something else. For a lot of people right now, it's self-glorification. That's the whole self-empowerment movement right now. That's a lot of the coaching industry right now, is self-glorification, where now you become the idol, you become the thing to worship, which I don't think is great for leadership, if I'm being honest. I think that the best leaders are the ones that are humble, and the best leaders are the ones who allow themselves to be led by God. And so what I noticed is, as I was going through, the whole coaching bubble and like just being swept up into the vortex of what that was, and at the same time like comparing myself, mimicking, which is not me standing in my original design, which is not me being set apart for the purpose that God created me for. I found this one mentor. There was this one mentor I remember always stood out to me, but for a different reason. And whenever I would get into her spaces, I wouldn't feel myself becoming obsessed with her. I would feel like I was more connected to God. Every time she spoke, I just felt like I grew closer to God and to my own design, to my own mission, and to my own purpose, to my own authority, like God-given authority. And the energy, the vibe, it was just different. It was just different. And she's the woman that I ended up, I took a whole break from the coaching industry. I literally took a year off from mentorship, which some coaches will tell you never to do because it's quote unquote dangerous. Yikes. But I had to be separated, right? Be made distinct, be made different, separated from the ordinary, which was this whole bubble. Right? And think about whatever industry you're in. Even think about this in terms of the context of social media, or even like anything that you're in. What is the ordinary? What is what everyone else is doing? Because God is never going to have you conforming to what everyone else is doing. He literally says it. One of my favorite scriptures. Oof. Oh my God, there's so many good ones about this, honestly. But one of my favorites is Romans 12, 1-2. This one literally pops up all the time for me. You've probably heard this one before, but this one literally be chasing me down. It says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." If you ever want to know what God's will is, because I know a lot of people ask all the time, what's God's will? What does God want me to do? I keep asking him. You're going to know what God's will is when your mind is renewed. And your mind is going to be renewed when you stop conforming to the pattern of this world. So there might be a moment where you have to separate yourself from the world to let your mind be renewed. And you really have to seek God, seek his ways, seek his word, seek who he says you are, instead of letting other things or other people be idols, right? The moment I find myself glorifying or worshiping anything that's not God, I'm in trouble. It's dangerous, especially as an entrepreneur who's been set apart for a divine mission and purpose by my Creator. And so, I took a break from everything. I really had to leave that behind. And especially, I'd made some investments that I was like, probably didn't need to spend $5,000 on that. That was not actually the best use of my my money, my resources as an entrepreneur, and it snapped me out of it. And when I did decide to jump back into mentorship, I went one-on-one, super intimate container, with my dream faith-based mentor, which is the woman that I told you about, where every single time I was in her space, it was a homecoming. It was coming back to God, and it was coming back to his purpose for me and my mission and my uniqueness. This is the thing. Oof, this is so good. I can't wait to share this. Okay. There's so many people right now yearning to know what makes them unique, what makes them different. That's the question everyone's asking, is how do I stand out? It feels like there's so much competition. It feels like everyone's doing the thing that I want to do. Why would they choose me? Why would they choose me? Why would they choose me? That's just what I keep hearing. And the only way you're going to be able to see your own uniqueness is when you allow God to show you, to choose you, to make you like himself, to make you holy, to make you set apart. You seek for his approval above the world's. You seek to meet his standards before you meet the world's, because he will change your vision and he will show you how you are different than every single other person out there. Remember what it says. It says, "I formed you in the womb. I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." You weren't your own idea, right? You were God's idea. And so only he can show you how to see yourself truly. And especially as you're building a personal brand and you want to know what makes you different than everyone else, what your unique value proposition is, only God's going to be able to reveal that to you. And he can't reveal it to you when you're immersed in the world and you're seeking validation in the world and you're seeking guidance in the world, which is why it was so important for me to separate myself, go into this intimate container with a woman that I knew was led by God, was going to bring me into deeper relationship with God. And of course, she was an incredible mentor, a business mentor as well. It was a strategic decision. It was a spiritual decision. And that's why I think that God had me name this container Set Apart, the one-on-one space that I'm currently promoting, that I only have 2 spots open for, because it's for 2 women who are in this era of being set apart. They are stepping. It's not that you stop posting. I never stopped posting. I never stopped working on my business. That's not what I'm talking about. It's I turned my posture away. Even though I was posting every day, I was online every day, I stopped comparing myself. I stopped mimicking. It was literally like there was just a tunnel vision on my ideas, my skills, my vision, my unique qualities, my voice. And I had my one-on-one mentor there as like this cozy, intimate space where she could just be the mirror that helped me see me more clearly and helped me see me through God's eyes. And I think through that, I've emerged on the other side with this brand that does not sound or look or feel like anyone else's. Like, no one else is doing what I'm doing in the way that I'm doing it. And that's a special gift. There's a special type of like the fulfillment, the soul fulfillment that I feel. Like, of course, it helps me market myself and my business. Of course, it makes me stand out to the right clients. But like the soul confidence that I feel because I know who I am in a sea of noise, and I don't try to conform to the noise, right? Like, I'm not trying to conform to this world. I am letting myself be different and set apart. And the reason a lot of people don't want to do that is because it does come with a rejection from the world. To be chosen by God often means to be rejected by the world. John 15:19 says, if you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. God chose you out of the world. He's setting you apart from the world. And something I used to say when I was younger, like in my early 20s, I used to say, the people who will change this world are not the ones who are in it. Right? You can't be an agent for change when you're absorbed into the very thing that you're trying to change. You have to be willing to do things a different way. Right? And I think the best way I can describe this is like my attunement. Like when I'm looking for guidance, when I'm looking for comfort, when I am looking for confidence, I am going straight to God. I am not going to the world at all. Like, the second I find my mind trying to like compare myself to someone and be like, oh, well, look what she's doing, it just like snaps back like a rubber band. And I'm like, no, God has set me apart for this. God has set me apart for this. That's her. Great that works for her. This is my lane. And that's how you be a trailblazer, right? Trailblaze is carving your very own path, one that's unlike anyone else. And it takes this like mental discipline that I think only God can give you, because if you're anchored in him, you're not looking outside of him, right? You got something to keep you on track, something to focus your attention on, something to move towards. Because if you don't have that, you're not walking the narrow path. You're going to be scattered. You're going to be distracted. And it's so easy to get scattered and distracted in the world today. And there's just like a way that God has of guiding us that's different than the world, right? That's why it's going to feel like, am I doing this right? Like, you're going to feel like the world is rejecting you. You're going to feel like an outsider, and that's okay, because that means you're positioned and poised to change the world. You can't change the world if you're in it. Jesus was outside the world for sure. Like, he was not trying to fit in. He was not trying to conform. You know, he was not afraid. I think the most influential people in history, him being the most influential person literally in history. You want to talk about starting a movement, man. His movement's still alive 2,000 years later. He knew what he was doing. And the most influential people were the ones who challenged the norms. They weren't the ones who conformed to them. And so the world is going to tell you to hustle harder. The world is going to tell you got to prove yourself. And God's going to say, trust my timing, trust my pace, rest in me, surrender. The world's going to say, sell every single day. And I love to sell, like I do, but my version of selling is serving. It's speaking. God's going to give you a voice to speak with that no one else, nothing in the world can. And when you tap into that, like, you're not going to sound like anyone else either. The world is going to say, I have my notes here, that's why I keep reading. The world's going to say, build your empire, and God's going to say, build my kingdom, right? One's going to keep you focused on self. The other one's going to keep you focused on him. The world's going to have you scattered, distracted, and God's going to have you focused and at peace. The world's going to have you comparing yourself to everyone in the room, asking yourself, how can I stand out? And God's going to shine this spotlight on you that makes you the only option for the people that he has for you. That's what happened with my mentor. She was the only option, even though there were so many people who maybe had made more money than her, had bigger communities than her, a bit more followers than her. She stood out to me. She was set apart for me, and there was no denying it. And for me, there was no other option. And that's what starts to happen when you do business God's way. You live for him, for his standards, for his approval, and you're not worried about the rest of the world. Okay, beautiful. Okay, where do I want to go with this next? I feel like we're almost done here. So we talked about being chosen by God. We talked about being made different, made distinct. Like, I don't want to look like the world. I don't want to sound like the world. I'm not going to move like the world. Even like, I think it's even so fun that I spent the first month of the year, like this is just one example of how God does this. I spent the first month of the year not selling a single offer. Okay? Because God said, give me this month. He said, I want you to tell your testimony. And he gave me this insane vision for what that was going to look like. He was like, 3-part series. You're renting a podcast studio. Yes, you're going to invest in this. Oh, and I want there to be an intro video and trailers. And I had my sister to do that. Like I lost money on that. Like I invested like $1,000, over $1,000 getting that done. I lost money in January. Like that's so funny. But I did it sharing my testimony. And in that process, I feel like I unlocked this new identity and this like new level of leadership in my brand. It just set me apart. Like it completely set me apart. I think you can see that as evidence when you go to my page. And it also brought like over 100 new people into my community, which is crazy. Like I've never had a post go anywhere near viral, and telling this story, over 100 new people found me in the last month. And so God has a way of moving that's different than the world's, right? Everyone else is like, here's how to have the most successful Q1 ever. Here's how to get the new year off started right. Already got $1 million contracted, blah, blah, blah. God was like, nah, Sylvia, this month is for me. You're going to tell your story. And God takes you through different seasons, right? Like now God's taking me through a season of selling, but selling so intentionally. Like my offers aren't for me. They're for like the women that he's making them for, which is, there's a peace when I sell because I know that he's already filled the spots. So it's different. Like God will just have you moving different. Like I can't even explain it. It's like with my mentor, like the best way I could describe it was there's the coaching world over here, and then she's just like all the way over here, like just moving in her own way. You're just like, whoa, like where do you get your commands from? From the Lord, literally. So I feel like that's the beauty of being set apart, is there's just like this peacefulness. There's this grace in the way that you move. There's this confidence that is so hard to put into words. And there's this ease, like genuinely there's an ease in the way that you build that you can never have in the world. You just can never have. Okay, so we're made different, we're chosen. And the last part about being set apart is that you're appointed. Appointed means given a special responsibility. And I'm going to go back to, let me see if there's just anything else here that I wanted to share. Yeah, okay, cool. I'm going to go back to Jeremiah 1:5. When it says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as prophet of nations. And like I said, whenever I look up like scripture verses, I'm like, let me go find out what the context was, because there's always so much wisdom when you look at the context. And so I went, and it's Jeremiah, God tells him, hey, I appointed you to be the prophet of the nations. Like, I set you apart. I literally made you in the womb for this. Like, you want to talk about getting a job title. In this world, we have to apply for a job to see if we're the right fit for the job. In God's world, in God's kingdom, guys, he literally makes the job and then makes you for it. Did that make sense? I'm trying to figure out how to phrase what I'm trying to say, but like, it's so funny. It's like, there was a purpose first and then you came. It's like, and I think about it like this, like, for example, this microphone. What came first, the microphone or the purpose? The purpose came first. Somewhere someone was like, I wish that my voice could be louder so I could talk to like 500 people at a time. And then someone was like, I will make you something for that. And then the microphone came to be. So the purpose came before the person. Or sorry, the purpose came before the object, in this case, the microphone. But in God's world, in God's kingdom, the purpose comes before the person comes. And that's why it's a perfect fit for you. That's why you're made specifically for it. And you feel that. Like, you feel that in your bones if you're somebody who was born, who was literally made for a specific purpose. And that's because that's the appointment. That's part of what being set apart means. So Jeremiah over here was literally made to be the prophet of nations. And you know what he says to God, guys? Oh my gosh, this killed me. I was like, yo, we really are all the same through all the generations and all the ages. He said, Lord, I do not know how to speak. I'm too young. That's what he said. But the Lord said, do not say I'm too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you. I have put my words in your mouth. Okay, guys. So here is Jeremiah literally questioning the calling that God gave to him. God, the creator of the universe, the one who literally made him and knit him in the womb. And he goes, I don't know, bro. I don't know. I'm too young for this. I don't know how to speak. And how many times have we done that? Like, raise your hand. I'm raising my hand, of course. Where it's like we know it, we feel it, we may have gotten so much confirmation as well. Like, how many client testimonials you have, how many times you've been told your work is transformational, how many people's like just like the knowing in your heart that like this is what I'm supposed to do. Like I feel it, I've experienced it, others have experienced it, and yet we come up to this moment where we're like, I don't know if I'm ready, I don't know if I can do it, I'm too young, I'm too this, I'm too that. All the limitations that we put on ourselves. And this is what I want to say, like, God's never going to give you something you feel ready for. Because if you did, then it would mean you didn't need him to fulfill it. And this is a big difference when you're set apart, is that you're going to be given things that are beyond just what you feel ready for. Like, he's going to give you something that's bigger. He's going to give you maybe even more money, more responsibility, more people to steward than you think you can handle. But you are only able to handle it because he's with you and he's working with you through it. Like, if you can do it on your own, your vision's not big enough. If whatever your goal is, you can get there on your own, it's not big enough. And there's this really amazing principle when it comes to goal setting. I learned this from my dad, who has studied under Bob Proctor, which is one of the world's most well-known success coaches. And he said there's 3 types of goals: A-type goals, B-type goals, C-type goals. A-type goals are the type of goals that you've done it already, so you know you could do it again. Like, if I have given a keynote speech about branding to a room full of 20 people, and I set that goal for myself, then it's an A-type goal. Like, I've already done it, I know I can do it. B-type goal is something where you haven't done it yet, but you've done something similar enough that you know you could do it. Like, for example, if I've ridden a bicycle, I could probably figure out how to ride a motorcycle. It's like, I can logically perceive that I'm able to do that. C-type goals are the type that are so outrageous and so wild and unlike anything you've ever done before that your mind can't even fathom what the first step would be. And Bob used to say, C-type goals are the only ones worth going after because they're the only ones that actually require you to think and operate in new ways. And that's what makes new results possible in your life. Because if you're not stretching, if you're not having to literally become a new person in the process, then you're not going to see very big actual changes in your life. And like I mirror that, I overlap it with what God tells us. And he literally like will never give us, he's never going to call you to something that you can do on your own. It's always going to feel so huge, so monstrous that you need him in order to fulfill it. Because what does God want more than anything else? Relationship. He chose you as his own for you to belong to him. Like that's literally the only thing he wants, is to have a relationship with you. And so by giving you these visions that are so big, and some of y'all need to increase your vision. I'm going to tell you that right now. You need to choose a C-type goal. You need to ask yourself what God wants to create through you and what he wants to partner on you with, and what would be possible if you had God to partner with in your business. Because even where you don't feel equipped, and even where you placed limits on yourself, those limits suddenly become irrelevant. Because what does God say next to Jeremiah, right? He says, I am with you. I have put my words in your mouth. He said, don't worry, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. You're the vessel and I'm going to do it. I'm going to put the words in your mouth. And especially for somebody who like feels like they have a voice, something to share, how much pressure does that take off of you when you know that it's not you, it's God. God is putting his words in your mouth. Your job is to be the mouthpiece. And I think this way of thinking has helped me, man, it's helped me think so much bigger, execute on projects that are so much bigger, work with clients that have businesses that are bigger than I thought I could handle. Charge more, like raise my hand just for like a higher level of responsibility. Everything has changed once I realized that everything I'm called to, I'm required to trust God with. And if I'm doing it with him, then any limit that I have just becomes irrelevant. Like even showing up on this live today, like it's literally as simple as that. Because I know so many entrepreneurs, like I coach female entrepreneurs every day, all day. And literally every day, all day is what I do. Because I'm in Telegram or WhatsApp chat with them. I'm on calls with them really frequently. And it's always this question of like, man, can I do this? Oh my gosh, Felipe, you're here. Hi. It's always this question of like, can I do this? I don't feel ready. I was nervous before I turned the camera on right now. I didn't know what was about to come out. But God told me that he put the words in my mouth. And I think it's coming out pretty great because of that. Like there's a certain level of confidence and authority that you have when it's not coming from you. Because we are limited. We are humans. Like we mess up. And I don't even not even mess up. I don't even want to say that, but it's just like we get tired, we get lazy, like we have limits to our energy, we have limits to our capability. It's just part of the game. But when we're vessels for God to work through, those limits again become irrelevant. And so that's what I love so much about this verse was God was saying, like, if I appointed you for something, if I gave you responsibility for something, what it means is that I'm going to partner with you in that. And so that's what it means to be set apart, is like you are literally working with God and for God and through God, or God is working through you. And the last thing I want to share, I just want to wrap this up on like a really beautiful note. John 15:16 says, I chose you, and this is Jesus speaking. I chose you and appointed you. I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last. I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last. So why does God choose us? Why does God appoint us? Why does he set us apart? so that we're going to bear fruit, and not just any kind of fruit, guys, fruit that lasts. What that tells me is that God is setting us up to leave a legacy. And I know that there are women listening to this who have a vision that's that big. They're like, what I'm here to do, it's going to change the world forever. I'm going to leave something behind that lasts. And if you're set apart, if you were chosen by God, if you're made different from the world, and if you are appointed for a purpose that you need Him to fulfill, those are the qualifying factors for a legacy that lasts much longer than you ever will. And we need to partner with literally the God who never changes and existed long before creation if we want to build a legacy, right? If we want something that stands the test of time, we got to work with the one thing that lives outside of time itself. And so that's my talk on what it means to be set apart. Thank you for joining me. If you're still here, I just want to share a little bit about my one-to-one mentorship space, because that's really what inspired this whole thing. There are 2 women right now who are listening to this who are entering a season where they just know that God is making them different than they were before. You're going through some sort of metamorphosis. It's like I see a butterfly, a caterpillar going into the cocoon, coming out a butterfly. And in this moment in time, you're looking for something intimate. You're looking for something safe, something, there's like the transformation, you can't go through it in public. You can't go through it with the rest of the world, the voices all around you, the noise all around you. You need something that's going to hold you as God shapes your new identity and helps you see where He wants you to go next, because God is elevating your standing in some way. That's for somebody. God is elevating your standing right now. I don't know what that means to you, but He's elevating your standing. And he gave me that message right before I went one-on-one with my mentor. And I just knew, I didn't hire her because I was like, I want to go to the next level. It was the next level's coming to me whether I like it or not. I could just feel that. I was like, are you ready? Because I'm about to elevate your standing. And I had to get myself equipped. I had to get myself in an atmosphere that became possible. I had to get myself the right guidance so that became possible. And that's exactly what I did. He told me, this is what you need. And I went out and I got it. And I'm so happy I did, because my business scaled. I had my first 6-figure year and scaled my business to $10,000 a month in revenue. And at the same time, I feel the real fruit was the voice that I'm speaking with now and the brand that I'm living in now that is just so set apart and so distinct from everyone else on the internet. And that's what God is about to do with you. And that's what I'm going to work on you with. And on the practical side, I love building scalable, sustainable business models. I just feel you're in a place right now where you're doing maybe a lot of one-on-one work, or you just know there's right now your revenue is attached to your time in a way that is not giving you full creative freedom in your life. And there's this level of freedom where your time and your impact get to be more separated from each other, because the business model you're going to put in place is going to allow you to hold a wider volume of people and make more money without adding more time. And that's something that I know how to do: strategically increase the demands for your offer, strategically raise your rates, because I feel you're just ready to charge more. You're right now underselling yourself. You are so much more qualified and so much more equipped than you can give yourself credit for. And you're ready to work with a higher caliber of client, whatever that means for you. And I'm here to help you up-level the value of your offers and the messaging around your offers, and even the marketing around your offers as well, so that we can call in that higher level client who's going to pay you at the rate that God wants you to charge now. because you have put in the work, my girl. And something else that I'm being called to share with you. Let's see, what else does God have for you? I feel like there's a story. Like there's a story that you're ready to share. There's like a creative project, a creative vision that you're bringing to life, and it's going to change everything. Like, I don't know what that means for you, but I just see that it's going to change everything. There's like, I felt this, there's like this roar inside that you want to release, like, and just show up completely uninhibited, completely express, like standing in your own lane, trailblazing your own path, like a story that just sets you apart from everyone else. And I feel like you're looking for a creative partner or co-creator, co-director, creative director to partner with. There we go. To bring this to the world in a way that just like lands as punch in it. It's going to position your brand. It's going to just reposition your brand and your movement. Like your community is going to change completely because of this story. So that's what this is for. I'm just really excited to meet you. The applications officially close tomorrow at midnight. So that's Friday, February 7th. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll decide to keep it open a couple more days. I know people need time to fill out their applications. But you know if this is for you. You know if you're ready to partner with me over the next 9 months in this intimate space. And I also have to say, there is one part of this offer that is literally so exciting. Because it means we get to meet in person in my favorite place in the entire world. And I'm just going to let you discover for yourself what that means, but it's included inside the package. So when I tell you this is literally set up for breakthrough transformation, like long-term, short-term identity shifts, it's just, I don't know who's stepping into this, but your entire life and business and legacy is about to change forever. And yeah, I'm so excited and thrilled for what God is about to do for you and through this this container. So head to the link in my bio. You can apply there. If you have any questions, of course, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to chat with you, maybe even get on a call with you. Like, I'm very open to that, to just make sure this is the right space for you. And yeah, I'll leave it there. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. And I'll talk to you soon. Mwah. Bye.